What is going on, guys? I am JoJo from the Wicked Arcade,
I'm Matt from Broken Laser.
and we are the Combat Dads. And today we have an amazing guest for you guys, the legendary Carlos Pesina. How are you doing today, sir?
Hey, gentlemen. Thank you. Once again, thank you for having me on the podcast. I really appreciate it. And hi to everybody out there. Carlos Pesina, the original Raiden, in Mortal Kombat development for over 30 years. Worked on almost every game possible for Mortal Kombat. Thank you, gentlemen, for having me.
Yes, thank you for being here and being a part of this. It means the world to us, for sure. But I kind of wanted to start from the top and just go all the way to the beginning to your originally where you from and your origins of where you grew up and whatnot.
All right. So Carlos Pesina. Grew up on the southwest side of Chicago, Archer Avenue and 35th for people who live in Chicago, like Damonish, McKinley Park area. Grew up with Daniel Pesina, my brother, who's the original Johnny Cage. He's got a plethora of like Johnny Cage, Noob Saibot, Scorpion. He was almost every ninja character. And friends with Rich DeVizio, Hosung Pak, Anthony Marquez. I usually call him Tony, so but Anthony Marquez is the proper way. Catalan Zamir, friends with Tim Kitzrow, all the other guys. Just everybody in the MK group. So grew up in Chicago. Went to high school, graduated from American Academy of Art, and then eventually jumped onto Midway to develop with Jack Hager and the rest of his team NHL Open Ice. I also did, obviously, I did Mortal Kombat. That was in 91 ish, 92, Mortal Kombat 2. And then from then on, just, started working at Midway up until I would say it's like 2 years ago from NetherRealm Studios, retired 2021, worked on MK1 for close to 2 years, did their, ran their motion capture studio. I was their lead animator for a while. And then I went to principal artist, to work on, just more or less focused my talent, I hate saying this, but and I was like a jack of all trades, did illustration, did animation, did motion capture performance, and actually ran the motion capture studio and was like their motion capture tech for NetherRealm and for Warner Brothers for a long time. Close to, I'd say almost 10 years with them. So
Wow,
that's it. That's it. I mean,
Yeah.
that wraps up my
Yeah.
life. Now I'm just loving retirement and being able to talk to you gentlemen because in the 30 I'd say like 28 years couldn't go out to everybody has a and I hate saying figurehead, but everybody has a representative for their IP, and I wish I had the time to go out and meet people such as yourself, our family, our Mortal Kombat family, and able to interact. But now that I retired, I'm able to go out there and pay my dues and my respect to the actual family that put me into the position where I'm at. So thank you again, everyone.
Definitely. Thank you, Carlos. I mean, just, we talked a little bit about, before we started recording about, how you guys practically, raised us, so to speak,
no doubt.
growing up playing the games. And, as a kid, I looked up to you as a martial artist, movie star, even though it was a video game. And I saw you in the same light. Just so I'm curious to know a little bit more about your martial arts background, how you got started in martial arts.
So martial arts, my brother Daniel, he's obviously 9 years older, and I think I think you guys interviewed him, right? Correct, if I'm not mistaken.
Unfortunately, no, not yet.
Not yet.
All right, don't worry about it. We'll get that all situated, and I'll talk to him about it. It's one of those things. It's because he did a month ago. He did a podcast, but it's just so hard keeping up with like, hey, what did you do? What are you doing next?
Definitely,
So
yeah.
I figured it was you guys because you guys reached out to me, and it was around the same time. So more or less, my brother Daniel saw somebody, and this was in a movie, flipping another guy around, and this is that whole like 60s, late 60s, early 70s, James Bond, Odd Job, Bruce Lee slash, Sonny Chiba era. And he asked he was always, getting beat by my older brothers. There's four of us. There's Ruben is my oldest, Tony is the next, and then Daniel is the third, and I'm the youngest, Carlos. So, and those guys are literally, from Daniel to Tony is more than 9 years, just like myself and Daniel. So they're already older, and they're always beating my brother, whether they're like running or racing. And so my brother's like, oh, if I learn how to throw these guys around, I'll be more athletic and can beat my brothers. So he asked my dad to take him to judo classes because my dad was in the military. You served in the Korean War, and he was like, "Okay, yeah, son. I did a little combat. He was at the front line, and he's like, yeah, this is good for your, more or less for discipline. And when we mean discipline, it's like self-centering yourself and having control over, because when you're a younger kid, when you're hitting that teenage years, you can't control your emotions and everything. And this was a good way to do that, more or less. Not that my brother was a hothead, but us Pecinas, we tend to be hotheads, but now we're not, because we're a lot older. So Daniel learned judo, and then he eventually went to Laho Bafa. This was a Chinese martial arts in the early 70s by a master, and I should say Shifu Choi. And we're talking early 70s, and there's a lot of guys we still keep in touch with who are in that system still. So my dad would go to pick up my brother in Chinatown, and I would go with him. And I remember being, 5 or 6 years old, going into Chinatown in Chicago, Chinatown near Wentworth, and walking into that school, and seeing all the guys working out, and they would have their uniform on, white shirts with the black pants and the tai chi shoes, and working out. So as a kid, we're all impressionable, and we want to be like our fathers, our mothers. Our parents define us, and so do our siblings. So I would stretch out, and Master Choi would give the thumbs up, like, yeah, he's going to be good, because the Chinese tradition is to teach kids martial arts, and to them that's like baseball for us here, or basketball, or whatever else, or even if it's video games, if we start learning early. So after a while, I would see my brother working out, and I'd mimic him, and he would watch me because my parents would go out to, on their date night and stuff, and we would kick around and stuff. So eventually, when I got to be about 10 or 11, you know, I think it was decided by my father, myself, and my brother, with the encouragement of Daniel, that, hey, we should, I could take him to, go learn over here, and we could, practice martial arts and whatnot. So from 11 on, I started, officially, like that in quotes, but obviously you're kicking around when you're 5 or 6 years old. Officially, I went to Master Choi's on Broadway, and that's where we met. My brother Daniel had met Tony, Anthony Marquez, and Ho Sung and Ho Young Pak there, and he's got to be, if I'm like 11, he's got to be like 18, 9 years older, and just learning martial arts, then hanging out with those guys. And then we would go to different martial arts schools and learn. And eventually, I would say like early 90s, like 90, this is before MK. We started with Master Go, who started off championship martial arts on Fullerton. And from then on, just was entirely for myself. I was entirely in Chinese martial arts, and the last system I learned was Baguazhang. I love the Chung style Baguazhang, but then my brother learned. He went to China a couple times. I learned the Yin Fu, style, and learn that and learn just a bunch of other stuff. So that's my sort of condensed history, of martial arts.
Wow,
Nice.
that's so yeah. So yeah, I forgot Chicago had a. Do they still have the Chinatown area?
Yeah, they still do. I haven't been there in a while, but it's obviously a lot different than when I was there close to like 8 years ago. I hardly ever get into the main city to, you know, to like tour or do the tourist thing. I usually go in and see my parents like once every 2 weeks or once a week, and myself and the three other brothers, we switch off to, head into town, check on our parents because my dad's gonna be 99 in February, knock on wood,
Wow.
and my mom's like 96. So, we're gonna head into town and see them. And they usually like staying at home or eating, or we'll bring them
Yeah.
out here to the ranch, just to hang out. So
Yeah,
but
Great.
still they still have that Chinatown area. I love the food there is great, but like any other city, whether and such as yourself, you guys, I'm sure, know the area to go to get the best food in that area, and bar none, it'll be the best food. Whether and we can't argue of like, oh no, this, New York has the best pizza. I've had great pizza in New York, Detroit, Chicago, and Los Angeles. So it's one
yeah,
of those things like, it's food's food, right? You
yeah,
know?
definitely. Yeah, I think what
Yeah.
everybody longs for is that home meal or that what they're used to. So
Absolutely,
that's
that ratatouille moment, where you're
yeah.
like, "Oh my god, I had menudo ahí en la casa," and
Yeah.
just doing all that, you know.
Yeah. So you knew Anthony before the Mortal Kombat stuff. Um, before y'all did the first MK, because when I so something that I always now it's like because now I don't really say MK1 referring to the original because people tend to think I'm thinking of the new
Yeah, the
one.
new one. Yeah,
So I guess I'll call it MKOG. So
yeah,
whenever we're referring to this one, but besides,
or just MK. MK's fine, 'cause
yeah,
that's how I always refer. It's just
definitely.
Mortal Kombat. So,
So did you know any of the other actors prior to that?
other than like Anthony, Rich, Hosung, not so much. Like John Parrish, yes, because I worked at Lakeshore Athletic Club with my brother Rich, Tony, and Hosung would pop in to teach and teach every now and then. So with those guys, I knew them, and with Parrish, we'd play ball, and that guy's a at the time fantastic athlete, and then Liz Malecki, we would, work out with her. But it was one of those things like when MK started, we were at that point working at Lakeshore and drew from the talent that we knew, and that includes Catalin herself. But, Catalin used to, kick around with us, or even before we knew MK, the MK thing was even a thing, and then
Yeah,
before that, I remember Rich, my brother Daniel, and Hosung, and I forget if it was the Battle of Atlanta or whatever, where Hosung was asked to do the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I remember like him telling us like, "Hey, I'm in Turtles. They're gonna have tryouts for the Foot Clan. Can you go?" And my brother and Rich went, and they got in, to work with a bunch of other like absolutely fantastically talented stuntmen, and they got in, and I was not, unfortunately, like I kind of regret not going, but also I had at my point in life, I was trying to finish school up, for to get my degree in mathematics before I actually went to art school. And at that point, I was like, well, I can't go because I got my summer off and I really want to enjoy my summer. I don't want to like work. It was funny because I viewed like doing that stuff with my brother and Rich and Ho as work to an extent, and I really should have went. I kind of regret making that mistake, but eventually when we worked on I think it was when Tony worked on 3, I eventually went out and actually got a gig with, working on TMNT, being a not a double, but kind of like stepping in and kind of like facilitating when Casey Jones had to be in certain scenes. And I worked there for 2 weeks. I didn't get paid. It was funny because I actually snuck in, and I don't think I'm in the credits, but I actually snuck in and just, it was one of those things like, no, 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 don't worry, I'll talk to Pat Johnson and everything will be cool. And after he sees you for 2 weeks, then they'll hire you on. And I was like, well, I actually have to go back and finish, my associates at that time. I had to finish my associates for art. So I was like, no, I really got to go back and I want to finish that up, to try to get a job at Midway. Cause, at that time we were like, I'm MK3 almost at that point. So it's one of those things, it's a funny life. Everybody else would have been, I'm dropping everything I'm doing, and,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna be a star. And for me it was, I always viewed life as a journey and, just a blessing if things worked out the way. I mean, everything's a blessing. It's just, it doesn't matter whether it's fame. Fame, is a blessing, and I'm glad that people such as yourself support us. I'm really thankful every night. It's a gracious thing. It's very humbling.
Yeah,
So,
we really appreciate everything that y'all do and how much y'all give back to the fans and stuff like that. And just the phenomenon that y'all created, so many years later, it's still as big. And I'm sure, well, I'm know that y'all gain new fans every day, So yeah, what y'all did is legendary and continues just to get greater and greater and greater. And it's a lot of people in life that are not going to be able to, leave a legacy behind, and y'all are definitely doing so.
well, I'm at the point in my life I've been able to reflect since I'm retired, and I just want to point something out, and I think it's just something in my heart that I always like try to point out, and it's you know, once again, I really appreciate that I have affected people in their lives. But I also want to point out that, there are other people in our lives that aren't famous that actually, and we all know this. I'm just preaching to the choir, and this is something I always like. I always say that we have mothers, fathers, siblings, uncles, and aunts that have touched us in our lives and that are not famous. And they've, like my parents, they're not famous, but they've worked hard to put me in the position to actually be here to talk to you guys, and
Definitely.
that's all of us. And so I think sometimes we just got to reflect. And I'm sorry, I'm being preachy.
No, you're all
I
good. All
apologize
all.
once
good.
again. But
No, you're fine.
recently I've just thought of this, and I'm like, holy cow, there's, where are those unsung heroes who have actually, yeah, they touched us, and we don't give them, the life's attention. And I think we should focus more on that every now and then. And we do, but it's just one of those things that I'm reflecting, and I'm like, holy cow, just everybody, like such as yourselves, we're having this conversation, and believe it or not, within a week or two or a year or 10 years or whatever, I'm going to reflect, and it's going to mean a lot to me. So,
Yeah,
just,
definitely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. No need to apologize. This is the Combat Dads podcast after all. And,
yeah. And we're all dads, right?
we're all
Are we all
Yes,
dads. And
sir.
fathers? Yeah,
Yes,
we
awesome.
sir.
all, we all hope that, we have some sort of impact on our children. And it's definitely why we do what we do. So
I have
thank
questions because I love, like, I love turning around podcasts into where I'm doing the podcast and I ask the questions. But
All right.
yeah, I have two kids, 23 and 26. So they're much older. Uh, Kids, what do you guys got? What kids do you have? How old are they? How many kids?
Well, yeah, this is a good question for me. I get that a lot because I have 6 kids. Uh,
Awesome.
three 3 are my own, and 3 are stepchildren. I have a blended family, large blended family. So we're like the
Oh, they're all your own. They're all your own. So.
modern day Brady Bunch. So,
Definitely.
Yeah.
yeah, my 3 are actually triplets. So they're
Really,
they're
that's fantastic.
13 years old and growing up, but yeah, it's a busy place around here.
What is that one thing that they have? Once again, you and your wife or you and your partner have, and you got to excuse me because I don't know you. So, I just need to say that you and your, whether it's your wife or your partner,
Wife.
what defines, you and your wife, what can you see out of those triplets and the other 3 that has defined them that you're like, hey, that's me, they love, whether it's Mortal Kombat, Star Wars or whatever, what is that thing?
Yeah, they all have definitely look up to me. They very interested in what I'm interested in, and it's a lot of fun to share my passions with them, but also encourage them to find their own likes and interests. Uh, my son definitely loves Mortal Kombat. I introduced him to it around the same age I was introduced to it. Back in 1992. But yeah, they all have a little bit of passion for the same things, but it's a lot of fun to just to watch them grow and share some of the same passions, but to see them flourish and do their own things as well. So it's with my stepchildren, it's been a lot of fun to introduce them to things that I'm interested in that they may have not had before, and also learn from them as well, because they had a different upbringing than what my kids did. So it's it's a lot of fun. It's a blessing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Me, I have 4 kids. My oldest, she is 19. Second oldest is 16, which is 3 girls to 1 boy. My third one, he is 11, and my youngest is 6. And funny thing is that my youngest daughter, her name is Cassie Cage.
Oh my God,
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. And then my wife was like, Cassandra. And look, in retrospect, it should have been Cassandra, because a lot of times in the game they refer to it as Cassandra. But I just always wanted it to be Cassie Cage. When I was a kid, I was so mad that my parents didn't name me Johnny. I was like, JoJo, what is this?
Yeah. Well,
So
it's good though. You could say, well, that's short for Johnny Cage.
yeah, there you go. There you go. So now,
JoJo, you have
Mhm.
your hands full because she's 19.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And
Yeah,
obviously you're the dad, so it's one of those things like she sees, and it's not a sexist or misogynist thing. Women tend to relate to their mothers when they're at that age because they're seeing that they're maturing, and when girls are younger, they look up to their dad, and now they're like, well, I got to go out and do. Oh my God, you got your hands full.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You have my sympathy because I
Yeah,
did do that.
I got through it 3 times.
Yeah, exactly. Holy cow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my daughter, she's she has her boyfriend, and they're in a serious relationship. He's a great kid. I couldn't have asked for her to have a better boyfriend.
That's
Really great
great.
kid. So yeah, everything is, I have no complaints is when it comes to kids wise. Sorry, my light turned off. But yeah,
No, don't worry
no
about it.
complaints there on my end on that part.
So how about
Fantastic.
your kids, Carlos? How did they grow up in knowing that their dad was a prominent character in this game called Mortal Kombat? How did you introduce them to that?
Well, it's one of those things that they knew I worked at Midway, obviously, because you you bring them up in an environment where, oh, dad's got to go to work, dad does this, and it wasn't until my son was about 12 years old when I took him to Galloping Ghost. We had an event, and we had, like, it was the like 25th anniversary. This is before the 25th anniversary. You know, we had everyone there, like
Mhm.
Parrish, on. I think Carrie Hoskins was there. You know,
Yeah.
Catalan, everybody. I think the only person missing was Hosung, and obviously, you know, Tobias and Ed weren't there. But it was one of those things where, you know, they showed up and they saw everybody standing in line and Dad signing, you know, stuff, and they thought it was cool. Then the next time we went to, I think it was like C2E2, I was able to go, you know, I was able to coax Warner Brothers into letting me go and, you know, do my thing on my own. And you know, it's always fun because they're like, yeah, we get to go to Galloping Ghost for free and to the Comic-Con. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Their thing was to, you know, and they were at that teenage level age where, oh, cool, Dad gets to get me in for free. It wasn't that, oh, cool, Dad is raiding, you know, because after a while it was like, cool, we got into the Comic-Con. We're gonna leave Dad and then go do our own stuff. You
Yeah.
know, Dad, oh yeah, yeah, Dad's raiding. He's over there. Go over there.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, and it's like, oh yeah, my uncle's Johnny Cage is over there. You know, and oh, my uncle's, you know, Kung Lao, and you know, because we're all such a tight knit group that they know, you know, even though they haven't met Hosung, they know him. You know, they know of, you know, talking on the phone with Dad or interacting with Dad, and it's one of those things like, yeah, 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 that's him. But they kind of outgrew it after, like, you know, they were like 14, 15, you know, because a couple years of that, you know, inundation of like, you know, oh yeah, yeah, he works at there and that, and you know, he works at NetherRealm Studios. I actually got my son in to do a bunch of stunts for MK10 and Injustice.
Oh wow.
Nice.
And yeah, it was awesome because he was actually doing, you know, because at the time he was very skilled at martial arts. He would go to stay with his uncle, you know, Johnny Cage, you know, Daniel Pesina for a month and then train. And then, you know, the next year same thing would happen. So he did that for a couple of years. So I bought him in to do some stuff because I at the time I couldn't find, you know, anyone not skilled or anything. We could find tons of skilled people, but it was just like, hey, in Chicago we need to keep it in Chicago, keep costs low. And so I bought my son in and he did a bunch of shoots, you know, did acting because, you know, when you're at home, I watch a lot of old movies and I'm always like trying to teach my kids, this is what you look for. You know, we try to define our kids, whether it's like, you know, whether you're cosplaying and making the suit out of, you know, whether it's, what is it, carbon fiber or fiberglass or anything. You just try to, you know, teach your kids the skills so they become either artistic or whatever you do for a living, whether it's math, like, oh, this is, you know, this is the problem you have to solve and this is how you do it, you know. So it's just problem solving in the end, whether it's art, whether it's math, whether it's anything in life. You're trying to teach your kids to problem solve something and to be not linear but sort of linear, a linear thinking. You know, obviously this is getting philosophical. I'm gonna drop that.
Nah, you're
But you know what I
perfectly
mean? You're
fine.
trying to teach your kid a certain way. Like, this is how you change brake pads. This is how
Yeah.
you draw
Definitely.
something. This is, yeah, exactly.
I get it.
So I tried to get my, you know, my kids to look at things and analyze them a certain way, you know, and we all do that as parents, you know. So you know, but then after a while he's like, I want to do my own thing. And then after that, now he's doing sort of what he wants to sort of do because he's like, well, I want to enjoy life. I'm going to do menial, you know, not that it's menial, it's you know, according to everybody in the world, it's not a, you know, not a fantastical super like absorbent job that everybody wants to do, but it's something that has to be done
No.
because it's one of those cogs that if you take it out, then nothing will ever get done. So it's an important
Definitely.
job, right? It's an
Yeah, for
important
sure.
job. Like when you go to Jimmy John's, you're like, I want somebody to make me a sandwich. There's no, or whatever, Pizza Hut, whatever. If there's no sandwich person, pizza person, you're not going to eat unless
Yeah.
you go to the grocery store and then you make it yourself. So these are all things that are very important. And if it's taken out of our lives, as minute as we think it is, we're it's going to affect our life. Like, fuck, I can't get my, and I'm sorry to swear, but I
No, you're
can't get
fine.
my Jimmy
No worries.
John's gigante sandwich, and I wanted that today, and it's going to ruin our day. But if there's somebody there, then we're like, cool, I ate my sandwich, I'm done, and I go do something productive. They did something productive that helped me. And that's one of those things I want to point out. These are small, minuscule things that get us to the point to do what we need to do every day in our lives. So sorry to
Definitely.
preach again, but it's just
No,
a
you're perfectly
different
fine.
perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, we're the combat dads, and we're all up for dad talk for sure.
Absolutely.
Mixture of both, a little bit of combat, a little bit of dad, and
Yeah.
for sure.
So going back a little bit to your original, when you first showed up, I guess, on set, so to speak, to
Mhm.
Mortal Kombat. How did you get involved with joining that team? Were they looking for local martial artists, and you just made the call, or they made the call, or just talk a little bit about that?
Well, and I know this has been everybody has I would say a memory of how it happened, more or less. And we're talking like this is between Tobias, myself, Rich Divizio, and Daniel Pesina, my brother. And we're all friends. So early on, John had, I think he was either going to Columbia and then eventually went to the Art Institute, for other classes. I think when he was at Columbia, he was taking a film class and he wanted to do and I should back up a little bit. I met John through a friend, Andrew Kodalka, who was friends with Rich. So I got to back up even more. This is one of those. I'm sorry to get. It's like a
Yeah, no,
domino
we
effect.
No, we
we
love
have
it.
the time.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. So I was going to Kelly High School in the south side of Chicago. Kelly High School had another school further away, maybe about, I would say, like less than 10 miles, called Curie High School. And uh, I went to Kelly High School because I was nearest McKinley Park. And Richard Divizio, Kano, and at the time I knew him and we would hang out. We studied martial arts together because we were brought together by a friend named Craig Clifford and I forget the other guy's name, and he's gonna fucking kill me because he owns La Gondola here in Chicago. So they introduced me to Rich. They worked out with my brother because my brother would teach classes during the summer to get it was like a side hustle teaching martial arts. Kind of trying to fund his learning more martial arts and going to learn from, different people, whether it was Dan and Asano or anybody in the Chicagoland area or, when they were giving seminars. So he would teach during the summer a bunch of kids, and we all got to know each other and we all started hanging out. And this was about they would call it middle school. For us it was just elementary school back then, 8th grade. So going into high school, Rich went to Curie because he was located on the Kedzie side of, in Chicago, Archer and Kedzie. So he went to Curie, met a person named Andrew Kodalka, who introduced him to John Tobias. And at the time, John was going, I think I remember, and once again, forgive me, John, I think it was Whitney Young High School. And we all knew each other because we all loved comics. We all knew art. And back then, Chicago, even though it was big, people knew each other from whether it was breakdancing. We're talking, this is the 80s, mid 80s. Breakdancing, going to like the mixer parties.
Oh yeah.
They would, you know what I mean? They would have like
Mm-hmm.
a banquet hall. They would have DJs there. They paid like $5. You'd go in. Everybody had their flyer, handing flyers out, and
Oh yeah.
that type of thing before the internet. A beautiful house music. And there's the contrast in Chicago. I love the fact that we had house on And not saying it's on one side, because it all became the same thing. We had house, and this is the subculture back in the 80s and 90s, and even into the the 2000s. We had that subculture of, you had house, BMX, the mixers, and then you had the goth industry people from Wax Tracks, and we were all into that because we were young, between like 13 and 18 in the 80s. Everybody loved that stuff. We would all get together breakdancing and wanted the same thing, just to all party and just let loose, because life was, we were teenagers, and as teens we all know that, just want to like go out, meet girls or guys, like whatever your preference is, meet whatever you like, hang out, meet whoever you liked, do whatever you loved, uh interact with people who were like, well, I read this, because there was no internet, there was no Discord, there was no chat, anything, there was
Yeah.
no WhatsApp, none of that. And that's how we all communicated. So we got to know John, and he wanted to, he knew we were martial artists, he wanted to do a film. And at the time we went out to do a film, and his dad's car got rear-ended, his camera got ruined, and we never got to do the film we were supposed to do. It was a project for Columbia College. And I know I'm rambling, but I'm just trying to get like the essence and the feel
Yeah, no,
of
you're
everything in the
perfectly
history.
fine.
So later on, like in '91, we get a call, and and I tell everybody this story. I remember being in the car, getting out of the car, my brother's car, Daniel's car, and heading upstairs, because he was, he had an apartment upstairs with my parents. My parents had a two-flat in McKinley Park on 37th and Hamilton. And I might be giving too much information, but I don't care. It's a beautiful neighborhood. And we're running upstairs, and my brother clicks on the answering machine, because once again we don't have a phone where we can go, oh, there's voicemail, and we're so spoiled today. So clicks on the answering machine, and it's Rich DeVizio. Got to call me back. John Tobias, wants to talk to us and whatnot. And from that point on, it went into calling Rich, getting the story, calling John, John asking my brother, myself, and Rich to come in. He had an idea for a game, and they were going to propose, or John was going to propose a game to everybody at, at Midway, like, hey, I want to do this fighting game. And at the time, it was, just a filler type game that wasn't potentially not going to go, not saying it was going to go anywhere, because for us, we were going to try our best, because we always worked out together. We always, Hosung, everybody, all of us wanted to do movies and be stuntmen, or do something with ILM, because the Star Wars was prevalent back in the 80s. And we
Yeah.
wanted to be creative no matter what it was. And we knew that we wanted to do something creative. And, when they called us in, it was a process of doing a proof of concept to an extent, John doing the heavy work, and whether it was Ed on the back end or whatever, I don't know. I can only speak to what I did, more or less, and my brother and Rich and John and those guys. We were doing martial arts in front of a camera to do this, like, this is the mood. Now they call it like the mood board or the mood reel or prelim, video. This is the look we want, you know, and then pitched it to whether they pitched it to management or whatever. John came back and had drawings already and a story. He worked with and I'm not saying, John wrote the story, but we had a group of people that were, John was an artist, he also liked writing. Myself, I liked art, we liked writing, we liked, HP Lovecraft, we liked August Derleth, we liked, ILM, we liked martial arts, Van Damme, we liked Predator, we like, everything you like.
Yeah.
Just imagine all your friends getting together and going, let's write a story. John wrote the story, and then he was like, hey, Carlos, I want you to be this guy. And I remember showing him showing me and it was a sketchbook on a notepad of Raiden. I want you to be this guy, you'll have the raps, and he didn't even have to say like where the raps came from, but it's one of those things like we're influenced by Asian movies,
Yeah.
martial arts flicks, kung fu flicks, warriors back in the day in the 70s, just all this stuff coalescing into one thing. And he's like, yeah, I want you to be Raiden. He's the thunder god. He's this. And I was like, I got it, because, we love John Carpenter. We love Master of the Flying Guillotine. This is what you want. And if it's not what you want, I'll figure out what you want, and each individual person that was a character was actually that character, meaning we were just ourselves and we defined those characters, and those characters just happened to be us in addition to whatever we loved that defined us. And that's what we got all the way up to MK1 today, and it's very difficult. And the way I put it is, you have a painting, and the painter, I don't know how long it takes a painter to do a painting. It could be weeks, it could be hours, like Frank Frazetta. And no one knows every microscopic, every minute thinking during every brushstroke. And that's what creativity is.
Yeah.
That microscopic level, So, and I
Wow.
know I went
And
on. I'm sorry.
no,
Oh,
you're
that's
perfectly fine. No,
that
we
was
we love all
amazing
of it.
story for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and at that time there was just so many action heroes that were, Arnold Schwarzenegger was out, Van Damme was out. There was just, and in all of those movies,
Stallone.
yeah,
Yeah.
Stallone. You had RoboCop.
Yeah.
Just came
Peter
off of.
Weller. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
So many people just came off of Batman with Michael Keaton, which is my
Yep.
personal favorite Batman.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think about that
So-
time period. You guys did the first Mortal Kombat. It was just perfect for us who grew up with that. I mean, it was just hit in so many right ways. It
Yeah.
was amazing.
Yeah, I think it was a wonderful time. I mean, it is. I feel that that's what's missing today a little bit, and I don't mean to, well, I'm an old man, and I'm going to say that because even back in the '80s, we were all like, and including today, we were all like, oh, look at the old westerns, or look at 2001. There's a reason why we have nostalgia. It's
Mhm.
because nostalgia is good. It's great. It's fantastic. It hits all those points. And I think that's what's missing today. I think this is just a personal opinion on my own. I think that's why Hollywood games today, other than their minute small percentages that are hitting it, like Black Myth Wukong is hitting that, and there's certain games that are just not getting that creativity across.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and you
And
can just
movies.
tell that the heart and soul that y'all put into this game, reflects it, and yeah, versus someone that's just sitting behind a computer. I mean, I'm sure, of course, that stuff it's hours and hours and hours of work, but for y'all to actually go in and put in the footwork of being in front of
Yes.
that camera for hours on end, and just hoping that we got something here, and boom.
Yeah, I think it's we got all the right people together at one certain point in time. And people say it's lightning in a bottle, but I want to expound on that. It's not just lightning in a bottle. It's the talent and creativity of each individual coming together and coalescing to make something that was a landmark symbol for and to have the sustainability for 30 years is amazing. That's just like Eastman and Leard with the Turtles. It's like Lee and Ditko with Spider-Man. I know Sony's doing movies with Spider-Man, but you got to hand it to the guys who have created it and had made that longevity throughout that lifetime,
Yeah.
including McFarlane when he touched Spider-Man. you know, at some point we were like at a lull for Spider-Man, and then when McFarlane touched it, you know, we were like, holy shit, this is fantastic. It's just like John Byrne when he touched, you know, he left the X-Men, and we thought, all right, okay, he's done, you know, and all of a sudden he touches Fantastic Four, and you know what I mean? I'm talking, this is old stuff. I don't know comics now, but it's like everybody, you know,
Yeah.
Cerebus having like all that long, you know, story, you know, Smith, you know, and then you got what's his name from Matt Wagner from, you know, whether it was when he did Primer, Grendel, and all that. You know, it's one of those things that's there was that passion back then that you know, it's just it's it, you know, it was all the time, you know, in the
Yeah.
50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, and into like 2005. It was like all the time everybody wanted to be great, and even the B movie or the C stuff was like, you know what, this is pretty freaking good still,
Yeah.
you know, right? But
Yeah,
now it's
I
definitely.
kind of
agree.
like it's a little wishy-washy, but that's just in my opinion being an old man, so you know.
Yeah, I feel you. Definitely can agree with all of that. Uh, how going back again to creating Mortal Kombat, the first OG Mortal Kombat. How much of Raiden's personality and mannerisms did you have influence over? Because just they're so distinct, and Raiden's character was just so mysterious and amazing back then. How much influence did you have on creating those?
Well, I'll say this, that we all had creative freedom, like ultimate creative freedom, you know, but then at some point when you're this is what's great about when you have a smaller company and it's a startup, and not saying that, you know, bigger corporation, they do still have creativity, but you didn't have so many chefs in the kitchen.
Yeah.
You had a collective group. And you know, sometimes we'd come up with you know, I would come up with an idea, and this happened even into development. You know, before I retired 2 years ago, you know, sometimes you have this great idea, and you just have to step back. And sometimes people are so arrogant and self-absorbed that they have to step back and go, you know what, that's a great idea. And that, you know, from early on, I was able to adapt and be like, yeah, yeah, that's great. You know, I'll do that and, you know, change this. Raiden was once again that's John's character he created, but I tried to fulfill. And here's another thing. It's one of those things that, and you know, I had a podcast with Richard Epcar, who's the voice of Raiden. And you know, it's one of those things like I did some voicing of Raiden from, you know, Deadly Alliance to Armageddon. But when they got Richard in, it's one of those things where you step back and go, yeah, that guy does it really good. He does it great, you know. And then you had Christopher Lambert, who was Raiden, who was playing at me as me, you know, it doesn't suck. But also there's that creative influence that, like, damn man, because I remember in the 80s, I was like, man, Highlander, the
Yeah.
Sicilian, you know, you were, and he's playing me as Raiden, but he's doing his own thing. I mean, he's obviously like, hey, do this character, you know, and he does the character out. It's one of those things is like such an honor for having people, you know, portray a character that somebody else created that you kind of defined, and then they also take that legacy and amp it up a little bit, you know. So it when I first started and did Raiden for MK, the original, it was no holds bar, you do you, and that's it, you know. And a little bit, I think back then I was a little arrogant, a little bit of a smart ass, a little subtle, and also very quiet because you know I had Ho Sung, who was the, you know, the Ho Sung and Ho Young, who were the main guys who, when we would compete, they were always up on top with my brother Daniel. And then after that, had, you know, it was more or less a tier. It was like Ho Sung, Ho Young, his brother, Daniel, then, Anthony Marquez, Daniel and Anthony were, in that same area, and then Rich and myself, so I viewed that as, trying to define a character that was different than all those other characters to an extent. And I was mostly the quiet guy, you know what I mean? I kind of knew my place, but also wanted to manipulate things behind the scenes because I'm a little like, like, hey, we should be neutral about this stuff, or hey, reflect. I'm very, personality wise, I'm a person who steps back. Obviously we all have knee-jerk reactions, but I try to assess a situation and go, well, let's look at it this way, and try to formulate a plan where it's, everybody's sort of happy but not upset that, when you make compromises, neither side gets what they want.
Yeah.
But when you make compromises and every side gets what they want and need, then everybody's happy. So that's how I always view myself. So in essence, I tried to bring everything I could, but once again, things that define us, that minuscule brushstroke of being Raiden, is like, reflecting back and being like James Liu from Big Trouble in Little China, being
Yeah.
Carter Wong in, whether any of the kung fu movies, or Jimmy Wang Yu or Bruce Lee, you know what I mean? Those are the guys we all looked up to. Schwarzenegger, Van Damme, John Wayne, I can name a million,
Yeah.
like all of those, everybody. You can, whether it's Jimmy Stewart or, I'm talking old cats. How can you like define all that in the essence of a person defining a character? And that's Raiden all wrapped up in all of that.
Yeah.
So, in essence, it is me, but it's everything that defined me, my parents, my dad, my mom, everything, so it's and I hate getting philosophical about it, but to me it's like I'm reflecting on my life. I've had, 4 years to be more or less retired and just sit back, smoke a cigar on the deck, or,
Definitely.
shoveling manure, or, helping my wife with something like cutting trees down for 8 hours a day. You sit there and you reflect and go, you know what? All of that defined me and helped me out be the person that I am, and you guys as well, that Mortal Kombat family, everybody that I've met, have defined me. So, and whether it's a collective unconscious that, just revolves around the world. So, once again, sorry again to get philosophical,
No,
but
you're
that's
Absolutely
just
not.
how I feel,
Very well said.
So, thank you.
yeah, and that's the goal of this interview. We wanted it to stand out with you and not try to just cut to the chase like, hey, we have certain questions, answer this and leave. We want to get to know, Carlos is
Thank you.
essentially, the goal of the interview is what we had in mind. But that's cool to know that. So pretty much you just improved everything of Raiden on the original.
Yeah, pretty, and it's difficult. I know a lot of people will look down upon this, but when you say improv, it's one of those things that collectively, consciously, you start drawing from things that you have seen or have learned or have lived in your life, and you apply it to that. Whether it's like, oh, I saw, Lou do, that type of stuff, or I know Nanchuan, and that's a little bit kind of like how Raiden would do his movements staccato like. So I'm gonna try to do that. Even though I as a person defined it, there were other things. Chinese martial arts defined it. Lu, John Carpenter. You know what I mean? Jimmy Wang Yu. Once again, yeah, you like you said, the essence,
Hmm.
the ultimate essence is everything collectively in humanity defined that. And I hate saying that as a general term, but that's the only way I can express it, because I don't want to diminish what defined me as, oh, well, I did it. You know what, guys? How much of an interview would that be? It's like, yeah, well, that was me. That's all 100% me. It's like, you
Yeah.
know what? You know what? Bullshit. That wasn't
Yeah.
all you. That was
No
shit
doubt.
you read. You know what I mean? Let's be honest. And that's what I love about this interview. It's I can be honest about it.
Yeah. No
At
doubt.
least
No
to
doubt.
to everyone. So
Yeah. No doubt. Yeah. Honesty is great. So whenever y'all went off of, so you know what, I got a quick question. So
yeah,
y'all knew Anthony before or during the filming of the original.
yeah.
Did y'all ever try to get him to, hey, jump in or anything like that?
Well, the story goes, the story goes, we tried to get him in the MK, the original MK, and he unfortunately broke I think his foot, so he couldn't come in, and Daniel had to do the ninjas. But what was good about that, I think that's one of those, that is one of those things that I think was in life, the ontology was supposed to happen.
No.
And this is getting very existential in life. I think it was supposed to happen because if he was the ninjas and we bought somebody else in for Kung Lao, or he did Kung Lao, I don't think Kung Lao would have been as Anthony
Yeah,
Marquez as
Yeah.
Kung
for
Lao. You
sure.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would have been a saturated moment. Anthony Marquez would have been somebody behind the mask being, Sub-Zero. And another thing is, I think that's why Daniel Pesina is the best Sub-Zero Scorpion that it's ever been, because he
Yes.
actually defined those roles and knew exactly. And once again, it's not that once again, it's everything that defined Daniel, and Daniel himself being such a talented individual, as well as the rest of us and everybody who's played it, including, this is one of those things. Okay, let me finish up on Daniel, and then I want to move on to the Scorpion thing. One thing,
Yeah. Not a problem.
Daniel Pesina playing Scorpion, knowing everything that he knew defined Scorpion. And then when Chris Casamassa, and just like Richard Epcar when he does Raiden, or what's his name from Highlander did Raiden, Christopher Lambert, they bring their own, but they bring additional definition to that character. You know what I mean? So it's like Daniel is the original Scorpion, and then you got Chris Casamassa. When you see him on screen, everybody still lights up. I still light
Yeah.
up. You know, whether it's my brother on screen, or whether it's Chris Casamassa, Christopher Lambert, but bringing it back to Chris, because I love that guy, because we all would do the circuit together. It is one of those things that define those characters, just like Tony. And I think if Anthony Marquez was Scorpion, it would have diluted a little bit. This is just my opinion.
Yeah.
Kung Lao, but he bought that essence of like, oh my, and he'll tell you in his interviews, if you guys get to interview him, but I'll pass this all along to those guys and anybody
Thank you.
else. That way you can get that retrospective, and you know what I mean? That way it all coalesces, and you guys have a podcast that's like, okay, this all, somebody can watch and go, saw Carlos's, saw Daniel's, saw Rich's, Tony's, or whoever else's, and then, you know what, it's kind of, now I get the whole story.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things that, like, Tony being the rock star, he made Kung Lao the rock star. You know what I mean? Like
Oh
how
yeah.
Ho Sung made the chosen one, because we all in our group viewed Ho as like, cool, he's a star, and we all knew our place. So like, let's push the star up, because we're all still stars, but we're, pushing that person up. It's like when you get like, Stallone, like the Expendables, like who is the star? Ultimately it's Stallone, but you know what I mean, you still have everybody, all these
Yeah.
stars, like holy crap, so everybody picks their favorite, then we're all good. So yeah,
Yeah. That's
Sorry, go ahead.
No,
I
no, no, no.
apologize.
That's just amazing to look back to think that there was that possibility that that Anthony could have been the ninjas, and that would have been a butterfly effect. Because
Exactly.
of you think of what could have been, because obviously he would have went on to MK2 and played the ninjas, and then they would have had to cast somebody else to play Kung Lao. And yeah, we would have never got the legendary. Yeah, that is mind blowing.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and all those guys, including Tony, whether it's Tony, Chris Kazamasa, my brother Daniel, Richard Divizio, Hosung Pak, Catalan, or anybody, anyone, John Parrish, or any of those guys. You view them and you see them. That is the character in whatever realm that you're thinking. Oh, movie, Chris. Oh, video game, Daniel Pesina.
Yeah,
Oh, Anthony Marquez, the rocks. You immediately think Kung Lao, and then it's like, oh shit, Rockstar.
yeah,
Immediately, and that's great. John Tobias, co-creator of Mortal Kombat. That's it's those relationships. That's great.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, just built a complete brotherhood
Yeah,
out
and
of that.
just real quick, because once again, I turned the podcast around, and it's how were you guys, and what was your introduction into the first day of Mortal Kombat? Like your emotions, and then I'll get to which character you like after that, but that's my follow-up question. But your emotionality, who introduced you, or did you just happen to be at the arcade, or we're at home, or we're at Target, or we're at Venture, or whatever you want to call it, and you were like, oh shit, what's that on the screen? What was that moment for you
Yeah.
guys?
What you
What was
just
that
said,
moment?
exactly what you just said. I was actually at Walmart with my mother, and I walked out and saw it. I saw your brother Daniel Pesina on the side art, and I was like, "Oh, that's awesome!" And then I walked around and saw the actual screen, and I was hooked immediately. It was from day one. Of course, I grew up. A lot of the influences that you've talked about. I was a big fan of. Van Damme, and a lot of martial arts. I never trained in martial arts myself. It just wasn't really available where I lived, but something I was loved and loved watching. And, it was almost like the game was made, exclusively for me. I love ninjas, and I grew up loving G.I. Joe
Oh
and,
yeah,
all
Snake
the,
Eyes.
yes. And,
Yes.
and just
Yeah.
seeing, the ninjas on the screen, it hooked me immediately. Uh, yeah. But that was my first moment. And, ever since I've MK for life.
Yeah, because for GI Joe, you had the action, you had the comic book, cartoon, action figures,
Mm-hmm.
and it was that relationship of the Snake Eyes and that black and white contrast and that clash
Yeah.
that just got
Yep.
us all hooked.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and once again, that was like the A Team on friggin' steroids. You had Cobra Commander, who was like, oh my god, I freaking hate that guy.
Yeah.
He's got that mask. You know what's great about that? And I'm sorry, because I want to reflect on this. Were you obviously watched the cartoon? Did you feel that it was as close to anime as we could get at the time before we knew what anime was?
I've never thought about that, but probably, yeah. I mean, now that I think about it, yeah, I would say so.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like voice actor, great
Hmm.
animation, great storytelling.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now,
Yeah.
here's another question. Did your mom drag you out, or okay, and when she did drag you out, how did you get the game? Did you get it yourself or did your friend get it, or did you do a paper route, or did you sneak it in? How did you get that whole thing? What was it, Sega or SNES?
I
Ooh.
had the Super Nintendo version. I was a big Nintendo fanboy. But yeah, I grew up initially, I loved arcade games. That was my mom was super supportive of, my video game hobby. And when she went to Walmart, Walmart used to have a row of, or at least where I grew up, they used to have a row of arcade games. And
Yeah.
that's where I would spend my time when she was in there shopping. And when the day that I saw Mortal Kombat, I was like, Mom, I've got to play this. Please, can I have some quarters? And she was like, sure, Matt. I play a few times, and she was great with that. And yeah, then I got it at home on the Super Nintendo. It wasn't the same,
Oh yeah.
but it was still a great port, and that's the one I played the most. But yeah, the arcade was really where I spent most of my time.
Now, Matt, do you remember the first character that you know what I mean? You put that quarter in, you hear that,
Yeah.
rolling in, and then you hit that button, you hear that like ping of the sound from the speakers up top.
Oh
What
yeah.
was that first character you picked? What
First
was the one?
character, it was Scorpion.
Yeah.
Definitely Scorpion. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was Scorpion and Sub-Zero were actually the first two characters. There was an older teenager playing, and I don't remember who he was playing as, but it was Scorpion versus Sub-Zero, and those were the first two characters I saw, which just definitely grabbed me right away. But yeah, Scorpion was the first one. His spear throw was, I really loved that. And but yeah, I love ninjas. That was my thing. Raiden, though, was definitely one of the most terrifying characters to me. Just his all of his, what you portrayed, Raiden as, with all of his moves. It was, he was probably the most. Even though Raiden is considered as the good guy of the Mortal Kombat universe, the Thunder God that's trying to help the Earth realm. He was still, like, with his glowing eyes and everything. He was always the most terrifying to me.
Yeah.
I could see that. As a young kid, I could see that more or less. Was it when you got the SNES? Did you get it for Christmas, or did your mom buy it, or how did that happen, more or less?
Yeah, I don't remember. I definitely got the console for Christmas. I have pictures of
Nice.
that still. Probably, I definitely, it was Mortal Monday was around real close to my birthday, so if I
Oh,
recall, it was
awesome.
probably most likely a birthday present. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And Jojo, what was that first initial, whether you like were on your, whether it was console or arcade, what was that initial reaction?
The first version of Mortal Kombat I ever played was MK2. When I was a kid, every other Saturday, my dad used to take us to go get haircuts. And then
Awesome.
after that, we would go to this little hole in the wall Mexican restaurant. It was called Picnic, and
Mm,
in the back they had an MK2. And I remember I would when I first went up to it, of course it was just on the track mode, and so of
right.
course I ran right over to him. I was like, "Let me get some quarters." And he was like, "Oh, I'll give you some quarters after you eat your food." And that was probably the
Mijo,
quickest.
no.
Yeah,
Mijo,
pretty
no.
much. Yeah, he was like, "You eat your food first," and I scarfed down my tacos. And I remember I went. The first person I ever picked was Johnny Cage. And of course, my first two rounds I won them. I was like, "Man, this is nothing." And then of course, ended up getting my ass handed to me. And as far as home ports, the first version I played, of course, was on the Super Nintendo, the original MK. My neighbor had it, and I remember he had lent it to me because I had told him about it, and he was like, "Oh
Right.
no, here's the original." And I was like, oh, "Okay, well, it's not as gory as the one I played over
Yeah,
there, but
two. Yep.
yeah, but that was before I knew about how they took out all the blood and stuff like that in the original." But yeah, same thing. I grew up with a Super Nintendo, but my favorite port is the Sega version for MK2. I just love the music. It just feels so so Sega, so so early '90s, that hip
Yeah.
hop feel that it had to it, and yeah, that was my favorite port.
Yeah, very polished, you know. And because you talked about tacos now, I'm thinking like, damn, I want some freaking carnitas. You know, I want some
Oh,
carnitas and barbacoa, you know.
there you go.
You know, because we're Hispanic, so you know, it's just one of those things. I
Oh
actually
yeah.
want menudo on Sunday, so I'm gonna probably do
Oh,
that.
and y'all got the perfect weather for some menudo.
Oh man, yeah, because it's you know it's the other day I was at Walmart and they had medunito, you know, it's in the can,
Mm-hmm.
and you know menudo is so hard to find here in Harvard, you know, because I'm like 62 miles from Chicago, and I just miss. I'm sorry to go off topic,
No,
but
no, no, you're fine.
I just miss that soul food, you know, that Mexican soul food. But what I was gonna get at was did your parents buy you the console game eventually, or how
Yes.
did you get it at home? And then I
Yeah,
have a
the
follow-up question.
the first one that I actually got at home was MK3. That was the first version that I owned myself. Um,
Yeah.
um, my That's when Hollywood Video was big,
Oh
and
yeah.
my dad he had rented it and he never took it back. That was
Yeah, it
pretty much. They're probably
happens.
still looking for him.
It happens.
So it just never got taken back, and I remember whenever you used to rent them, you would get lucky sometimes. And in the box, sometimes it would have, of course, the game, and sometimes it would have the booklet
Oh
that would
yeah.
come with the. So I had got lucky, and that version where that one had the booklet. So I remember I would sit and I would draw all. I would try to redraw all of John's pictures that were in there, and
Yeah.
God, it was, yeah, what a time to be alive.
Ain't it?
Yeah, I forgot about
That's
that.
fan-
That they used to come with some of the rentals used to come with the instruction manuals. Yeah,
Yeah, most of the time people would steal them and
yeah.
keep them. Yeah, and I had completely lucked up, and it was in there. And yeah, I remember I would draw everything that I can draw on. It had a Mortal
Excuse
Kombat
me.
character. All of my stuff at school, my folders and stuff like that. A lot of it had drawings of MK. It was
Yeah.
funny. I remember one time, for this was all in elementary, and this was when like Dare was huge,
Yeah.
and so they had us all make little signs, right? And there was supposed to be, I wish I could find a picture of it. And the drawing that I did was, it was of Sub Zero, but it was MK3 Sub Zero, and he's doing a freeze, and the guy he's freezing has a cigarette in his mouth.
Oh my
Yeah.
god, that's awesome.
I think somewhere, I know my family has a picture of it, because I remember they took pictures of me holding it, and it's probably looks horrible now, but yeah, that was
No, that's
it,
the coolest shit, man. That's fantastic.
yeah, it
You know,
was it was hilarious.
and this is one of those things I want to touch upon. Like, all of us guys love hearing that stuff because we're like, holy cow, it's those moments of life like, hey, I did this, but you did something else, whether it was inspiration or whether it was like you just did it on your own and you love doing that, and both of you have just mentioned memories that are like, this is freaking awesome, you know. And once again, it's a personal experience that I would like to say thank you for including us in that experience. And it's profoundly existential, on our end. So
Yeah, and
words
without
can't
y'all,
describe it.
yeah, because without y'all, there wouldn't be no memories, for us. A lot of us that are, that grew up on all of the originals, and when I say what a time to be alive, because you think about,
Yeah,
kids nowadays, and how we were talking earlier about how games really don't have the heart that they did before. You don't see the kids nowadays drawing a Call of Duty character, or
exactly.
drawing a Grand Theft Auto character. This is something that, that we did as kids, because it was like a pure love and fascination for this, and with these games, when we bought it, whenever, when Matt had Mortal Kombat 1 and I had 3, you had to go in and unlock the character, you didn't have to pay $50 every 2 months, for the game to, you actually had to deep dive into the game. All right, I got to figure out how to unlock this guy, or like I can remember freaking out on MK3 when you see smoke, him getting covered. It's like, well, how do I get to this guy? So it's stuff like that was just super amazing, and like I said, it's just not like that nowadays.
It's like, how do I pick? I'm mechanical smoke per se. Now I want human smoke. When I battle.
Where is this
Yeah.
guy?
Yeah.
And it's you just don't get stuff like that anymore. And especially with MK2, I feel like MK2 was just, that was y'all's guys. That was a Picasso. I feel like from top to bottom, just everything y'all did on it was just excellence. And it's just an amazing game with so much replay value even today.
Oh,
and
absolutely. Yeah.
I remember one time there was an interview, and I'm sure that people would have found anything by now because a lot of people get into the codes and stuff like that of the arcade ports. But I remember of interview where Ed Booth says not everything in MK3 has been discovered yet. And like I said, now it might have been, but that would be, but just a couple years back, I remember they found the codes that you would type in on the buttons, and it would unlock the EJB menu. So I mean, that's
exactly.
yeah. And I feel like, I don't know, I feel like it's a song that that I think that he was tapping. And I think it would be cool to know if that's that philosophy is true, because when you hear when you see when people do it, it kind of sounds like a rhythm of a song. Because I even do that when I'm playing the games. I'll tap, certain songs. There's times where I've tapped Ice, Vanilla Ice, doon 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 doon. Just So I don't know. It could be a little theory that I have that I feel. I don't know. I'm rambling now too.
No, you're not right. I mean, that's something that that Ed should at least discuss. Everybody involved in that process should discuss, and it's difficult now because it's been so long, like 30 years ago, and everybody's had a development cycle of every iteration of whatever they did for the past years. But it would be an insight for all of us, including myself as being part of the creative process, as well as people in the MK family who are like, I love this. It's what is this? What defined that? This minuscule things, and that draws me back to what I was just saying a while back. I think while we were having that discussion of when I was interviewing Tony on a panel, I asked him, like, what was that thought process of when you put that hat on? What did you think of? And he defined that moment. And I don't think anybody's ever asked that question. This is something that Rich DeVizio and I talk about, because Rich has like an hour ride home, as well as I have another friend. Like, we catch up every like few days, and sometimes they have like a ride home and they just want to like catch up. And as a brother, you just like, oh yeah, what are you doing? Oh, nothing. I just got through I'm in the middle of workout. I'll postpone that. Let's just, like talk so you have your time to get home. But Rich and I discuss this all the time, that we know each other so well within the group, all of us, meaning outside of we're still all the MK family, but the actors, that we can ask those personal questions that people tend to not want to overstep their boundaries and ask, but they should ask. They should ask certain things, like you just said. Somebody should ask Ed. Well, it should be you guys. Hey, when you do this, was that a song? What was in your head when you were typing in the code to do that? Or, with Anthony Marquez, what was, the hat when you did this? Or Daniel Pesina, when you threw that spear, what were you trying to accomplish? What was that whole thing? What was that moment? Rich DeVizio, when you were slashing, everybody has something in their head. That might actually toggle their memory to be like, oh man, you know what? Nobody's ever asked me that. Now I just remembered what that memory was, and we all need that, because we, as as something we all love, we want to know everything about it. We might not know everything, once everything's said and done, but at least we'll get a lot of information from that. So
Yeah, definitely. Or like forgotten memories.
exactly.
Yeah, for sure. So going back to Raiden.
Mhm.
So after your portrayal of Raiden, who is your personal favorite from let's see I guess we'll start at the 3Ds at MK4 and up. Excuse me.
So no, that's all right. MK4, I didn't do so much work on. I just helped out. So it was one of those things that obviously Raiden was good, and then just goofing around with those guys because I was busy finishing up Special Forces while Ed and his team did MK4. But from the 3D era, I would say my ultimate favorite is Shijinko because
Mm,
he's the classic, and I worked with and obviously this was a John Vogel Louis Mangabot. Louis Mangabot was our 3D character artist at the time. John Vogel wrote all most of the storyline. I shouldn't say all 100%. There were other influences, whether it was Ed or anybody else, or when you're on a team, you're collaborating. So I would say Shujinko because he's the Pai Mei slash Fist of the White Lotus, Gordon Liu, ultimate villain bad guy, but Shujinko is the good guy because he's got the long beard and
yeah,
the traditional Chinese kung fu guy. The
yeah,
old guy, whether he was good at doing kung fu or whether he's the bad guy. And I feel like to me that was our contribution to when John wasn't around, our contribution to MK, other than Dark Raiden. Dark Raiden's like pretty, we're like this, because Dark
yeah,
Raiden was a Dark Raiden evil guy, but then also we used a little bit of, a Jet Li's Tai Chi master. The ending villain had that outfit when Jet Li uh at the end was fighting him. It was like his brother from Shaolin, was that conflict. And Lewis and I and Alan Ditzig and Carl Patton and a few of the other guys worked closely during the 3D era because, we were trying to redefine Mortal Kombat because, everyone talks about, oh, MK1, that got me into the game. And then, you know what, you guys topped yourself with MK2, and then people talk about MK3, Run Button, Ultimate, had all the
yeah,
characters. People tend not to talk about MK4. Nothing against it, but they were like, it's at
yeah,
least in my favorite. But then when they get to Deadly Alliance, Deception, and Armageddon, they were always like, oh my God, the 3D era. And I know
yeah,
there are going to be people who hate on it, but, those are the newer people who didn't grow up during that 2000 early
yeah,
2000 era.
Yeah.
We needed that. We needed that back. Because we
yeah,
got and I admit it, Mythologies wasn't great, and we were trying to create a game that wasn't, consoles weren't really established. The PS1 was really like, oh shit, that's expensive for,
yeah,
$199.
yeah.
So in the 3D era, I would say it's Shijinko, and then probably, Dark Raiden. So
Yeah, Dark Raiden was such a badass. I remember seeing him for the first time and freaking out. Like, oh my God, this guy's going to the dark side. No way.
yeah, and plus we had conquest mode and
Oh yeah.
create a character. You know what I mean? That shit was just
Yeah, then motor
Yeah.
you had
combat.
Mortar, the kart racer, and then you had the
Yeah.
puzzle fighter shit. Now
Yeah.
the chess. It's like
Yeah.
holy cow! How did we?
Yeah, it was
Back in
so
the
much content in that game.
Yeah. I would love to see a new conquest mode in
Yeah.
oh yeah.
MK. So, yeah.
And I look back and I was on that development team and I was like, holy, I remember working 15-hour days for Deadly Alliance and Deception. Armageddon, I got a little break, but it was one of those things like, holy cow, how did we
Yeah.
cram all that stuff and
Oh,
Yeah.
into
And
those
that?
then
were amazing games.
yeah, and then y'all even had the crypt to where you were
Yeah.
able to still go in
Yeah,
there and unlock content. So like, yeah, it was
yeah,
so much on that disc. It's crazy.
yeah. We had
Seeing
like, I swear to God, we had like no more than we had 30 people on the team, and then the sport would probably bring it up to 100. But still, you
yeah,
couldn't do that today. You
Yeah.
yeah,
could,
and yeah, without having to pay for all that.
yeah,
You got that disc and you paid what 60, $70 for the game, excuse me. And then
yeah.
it was just so compact with so much content in that game. God, yeah, it was just God. I remember making all kinds of fighters. I would make Street Fighter characters. I made me. It's just
Yeah,
anybody I can think. I remember one time I made Tupac. So,
that's awesome.
anybody that I can think of, I remember just creating them and having them fight against Melina or whatever. And yeah, it was just it was just an amazing game for sure.
Here's a interesting like tidbit nobody knows from product development side. So Louis Mangabot was in charge because you said you created Tupac and whatever. Louis Mangabot was in charge of the character creator, like putting the pieces together and everything. And what he would do is because we hung out a lot together. We went to go see Master of the Flying Guillotine at like Century Mall in Chicago. When they would have their like anniversary release where everything's like, oh, upres remastered for DVD. And we would do stuff like that or watch kung fu movies or anything we can get our hands on to make back then the 3D era game very creative. He would he would create a character like he actually created like one of the and it's from Battle of the Planets. And back then it's like whatever Super Ninja Team Gotcha Man. He actually created the character, and then what he would do is like, I need this piece, this piece, this piece, or Harry Potter was another example. I need this cloth and this cloth, and then he would work backwards to create like those pieces. So, like you said, you created two packs so you could piece stuff together to make any
Yeah,
character, which was
yeah,
amazing. You know, very talented individual. So,
yeah. That game had so much to offer.
yeah.
It was a
Yeah.
completely an amazing game for sure.
What's been your favorite Mortal Kombat game, Carlos?
Well, uh, and this is going to sound corny. I love them all, but I think in product development side, I'm going to say MK11. And if I would have been able to finish MK1, it probably would have been the best Mortal Kombat game ever. Like not compared to 1 and 2 because there's a history there.
Mhm.
But I
Yeah,
think if I was able to work on, because I had this vision for Mortal Kombat 1 towards the end, and ultimately I think because I did the fight choreography on 11 for the story mode. And what I tried to do there was draw from everything that I love, whether it was kung fu movies, John Wick, and action adventure movies. And I was able to work with the director, Marty Stoltz, and a very talented two individuals, Todd Keller and Dan Wayland, and as well as my animation team of, and I shouldn't say my animation team, but at the time I was a principal artist. So the guys that I had to work with. I didn't have a director's title there, but for MK11, I was freed up on other tasks because, at some point I had to do, okay, this is what I had to do. Sometimes I had to get in the motion capture suit. One, I had a couple other guys help me with the studio, the motion capture studio. Set up the studio, calibrate the studio. I picked out the equipment with a few other guys, and we decided like this is what we're gonna run with. What OptiTrack, and then proof of concept. Carlos getting the suit, do stuff, and then Carlos, process the data with a bunch of other people, meaning like I got to clean up all the motion capture data, which is pretty simple and easy. Carlos keep track of the motion capture studio. If something breaks down, a camera doesn't connect, or the network doesn't talk to the computer. Oh, I'm having an issue running real. There was just so much crap I had to deal with that. Then if there was an idea for, let's say, a fatality, I'm going to throw out a perfect example. So we're doing fatalities, proof of concept. The character guys want to know how to cut up the character for, let's say, we want to go in and we want to shoot Baraka as a R&D, research and development, fatalities. So we want to go in and we want to capture this stuff. And I would say, okay, and we're talking, this is production, the character lead, and anybody else involved other than myself. They would say, what do you want to do? To those guys. They're like, how are we going to do this? What are the sections we're going to cut off? The hand and all of this stuff. You know what I mean? These parts. So they would say, hey, we're going to go in today, meaning let's say we started today at 9 o'clock. This is your job. Start at 9. About 11 o'clock, you're going to shoot at 1. Character guys, production guys, everybody wants to do R&D development for pushing out like Mortal Kombat's fatality stuff in 3 months. We want to start shooting that process, but we got to build the tech to get to that. They would come to me and say, hey, we want to shoot this stuff. Get in the suit, calibrate the studio already, and then get in the suit. Have your team run in the studio while you're in the suit. What can we do for fatalities? And I would say, great. Give me a shot list, what you want, and I'll act it all out. Well, I would get every now and then, we don't know what we want to do. We don't know what we want to do. Not all the time, but when it would get to that situation, I was multitasking. So I went to school as an illustrator. So I said, okay, I would take a piece of paper and then draw out, okay, Baraka cutting Baraka's limbs off, cutting his head off, cutting his waist off. And this is not including like, impaling or whatever.
Yeah.
That's all different that I would try to think ahead of because working on Mortal Kombat, I would try to think of every Mortal Kombat game that we did. This is how we would do certain fatalities, and I had to limit it to 8 different pieces. So I gave the character lead a sketch. Mind you, I got to eat lunch, so I started at 11. So by 11:30, I shot him the sketches that I did. Because this is how it was back in the old days.
Yeah.
Shot this, would draw out the sketches, hand it to him, and he would say, these are friggin' perfect, because visually you need to see something.
Yeah.
And I was that guy that crossed the gap between the visualization of something. If somebody had an idea and you said, and this has happened many times, I would get something in front of me within 10 minutes before I'm in the suit, and I would look at it and somebody would say, I need to get to A to B. This is A to B. I don't know how to get to A to B. And what I would do was just microscopically take that apart and go, you need to do this to get A 1 to 2, A 2 to 3, A 4 to 5, which gets you to B. That's how we need to cut it up. So that's what I did for the character guy. And then I would go in and I would actually be the guy doing both sides. I'd shoot it. Then we'd get somebody to, whether it was myself or one of the 8 to 10 other animators or outsourcer or whoever, to animate it. But by 11, I was able to sort of not do that, kind of delegate it, and able to focus on more of the action stuff and get more, between 9 and 1, I was able to get like the 1%, close to the 1% of the stunt actors that Hollywood use to come into the studio to work with.
Yeah.
Because at that time, you got to think this way. You need that percentage because you're working on such a tight schedule and such a concept wise and research and development wise, such a short timeline that you need the best talent, no matter who it is, to come in, and you need the best talent to be at the spearhead to execute what you want done. And I feel that 11 was at point where MK1 would have been it, but I left halfway through. But I think that MK 11, for the short amount of time, because I only had 2 weeks between every chapter to do all the fighting and get the proper talent in to execute what I needed done. I think MK11 happens to be one of my on working as development, MK11. Now, playing the game would be MK1, and my favorite is MK2, ultimately. But I think, between 5 through 7, which is, Armageddon, Deadly Alliance, and Deception, and MK9, those for me are the fun party games where you can, get in and get all your friends together, order pizzas and just have a
Yeah.
tournament all night and just have a blast, And I'm sorry I went off into that
No,
direction, but
you're
that's
perfectly
the only
fine.
way to get that
No, yeah,
microscopic viewpoint of game development.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's a way better answer than just saying, "Oh, MK9 next question," or
absolutely,
MK11.
yeah.
So yeah, to break it down the way you do, that's amazing. And yeah, and MK9 was so amazingly put together, and especially to come off of but after what was it? Before MK9, was it
It was
DC versus MK?
DC. Yes,
DC, yeah.
So
yes,
we
yeah.
the fans came off of that, in complete disappointment. Yeah, and then for y'all guys to just come back like, check out this shit,
Yeah.
and that
And
was
MK.
amazing.
Yeah, exactly, and I understand your sentiment, but MK versus DC, you gotta. It's one of those things that This is one of those secrets that can't get out. No, I'm just kidding. We wanted to do MK versus Street Fighter. And at some point, Capcom was like, "Nah, we're doing our own shit." And whether it was like whether somebody on our side or their side didn't want to do it, I don't know that story. But ultimately, we want to do MK versus Street Fighter. What was that, or for 9? And ultimately it was like, we can't do it. And I get why fans don't like MK versus DC, because you got the rage. Oh my god, the rage, and
Yeah.
not like fatalities. Like, I want to friggin' cut Batman's head off, or stab
Yeah.
Superman. And you're working with another IP that was like, nah, you can't, and at that time we were separated. Midway was different than WB and DC, and you got to respect. At the time, your hands are tied, and you're like, shit, we want to do this, and we know the fans just eat it all up. Like, this is the best hamburger I've ever had, or the tacos or the pizza or whatever. And we wanted to do that, but your hands are tied, and you're like, okay, well, PG-13. It is what it is.
But I would imagine it would have probably been PG-13 with Street Fighter, right? Because I can't see them, being okay with, ripping off Guile's head,
Well, yes, I agree with you, but yeah, you know what I mean? I think they could have been lenient, like how the Sony guys were with Kratos. You know what I mean? Because he was an MK9, and that was fine. And they came back and said, make these changes. This looks, whenever they, and this is a great about working with Bruno and those guys on the Sony team and the animation team, because they knew exactly what they wanted with Kratos. And when they came back to us and said change this, there was never, because once again, some of those guys worked on Shaolin monks, and half of the guys, were on MK9, worked on Shaolin monks, or not half, but a few of us, and they told us how they worked with, and we worked with them, and we knew them because I worked with them back in the day doing the opening for Shaolin monks. And when those guys said change this shit, it was like friends telling you, do me a favor, guy, just change this. We don't want everybody mad at us. And
Yeah.
we were respectful. We were like, yep, absolutely, we're gonna do it right now. You never wanted to fight with friends, and that's another thing in the industry. Like, at some point, even both sides having egos, whether it was Sony or Warner Brothers, we were able to push that stuff aside because we knew what each side wanted. We wanted the best thing possible, no
Yeah.
matter what. And I think that's not that it's lacking today. I think it's not in the back of everybody's, it's always pushed back in everyone's head. They always want to be the star, like, oh, we're going to be the star. And I think that's what was great about Mortal Kombat. You got so many stars. You got everybody who knew their place in the play or in the story or in the movie or whatever you want to call it. And we knew exactly where to be and who to be. So that way the entire game would be the actual star itself.
Yeah. Yeah. That was, yeah, it's crazy when you think about how much there is behind the scenes, with creating these games and the struggles that you guys have to deal with and stuff like that is, and I can only imagine with getting guest characters and stuff like that. Who is somebody you personally would love to see as a guest character?
You know what I would love? I would love, and once again, if we had every character from Mortal Kombat, meaning in the history, like, whether it was Tobias created it, or Alan Ditziger, John Vogel, or myself, or whatever. I would love all the roster of Mortal Kombat in one game. And if
Ooh.
you were to ask me after that, I got to play a bunch of different characters, as well as stunt guys, to play, the guest characters, like Chris McClure got to play Rambo and RoboCop, and then we just had a bunch of people like Taylor Marquez, everybody. And if I'm forgetting somebody, please, I apologize. Everybody who worked, Lauren Mary Kim, Amy Johnson, all those, Eric Jacobus, those people were fantastic doing their part playing a certain character in Mortal Kombat. But I really wish, um, and this is outside of the guest character realm, because I understand people have that issue where, like, oh my God, why is Peacemaker in the game and not,
Yeah.
human smoke as opposed to cyber smoke or whatever.
Yeah.
If we got all the Mortal Kombat characters in, let's say we got them all in,
There you
and
go.
then we wanted a
Yep.
guest character, I would love, because I have a little insight in this, but I'm not saying anything about it. I would love to see Ash from Evil
Oh
Dead in
yeah.
the game.
Ooh. Yeah.
I've seen Ash mentioned a lot. Yeah, just on
Yeah.
social media. Yeah, people would love that for sure.
Yeah, perfect character, because he's like, he's like Drummond a little bit. He's kind of
Yeah.
one sided.
Mhm.
He has
Yeah.
something on one side, a club hand and then a free hand. And he's similar to that gameplay a little bit. And that's easily, not saying we use the same moves, it's easily adaptable to get
Yeah.
to the game. And he would be perfect because, just, Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell, that whole thing is just, it's that screams, whether it's Evil Dead, because we did draw from that as well, because that came out
Yeah.
before Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
That they coexist, just that gore and that humor and everything. It's a
Yeah.
coexistence. Yeah.
Yeah,
For
that's
sure.
a great pick. Matt, who would be your wish guest character?
Yeah, man.
Man. Well, one that I've always wanted to see is Shredder from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I would
Ooh.
love to
Oh,
see
yeah.
Shredder. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's been my
That would be
go-to
perfect.
guest character. And I
Yeah,
know
he would fit.
within Justice, they brought the turtles in, and I was kind of
Yeah.
hoping that would be like a little segue to get Shredder, but yeah, it hasn't happened.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I can
And
only
JoJo,
imagine.
who would you
Ooh.
want?
Who I've always wanted to. I feel like he would have fit perfect in MK9 is Needles Kane, Sweet Tooth
Oh, yeah.
from Twisted
Yeah.
Metal.
Twisted Metal,
I
yeah.
feel like I feel like Needles Kane, and then with the graphics that MK9 used, I feel like the whole clown with the hair on fire. God, that would have fit so perfect in that game.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
And back then, there was also discussion of like an MK9, like, because, we got Kruger. There was a little discussion of, because this always goes around when you're in product development, who would you like to see? And I think Pinhead was mentioned,
Ooh,
somewhat
Yeah.
and for MK9. And, obviously in every MK game, we were like, Bruce Lee, but, that's not going to. That's not going to
yeah,
happen because you don't want to see Bruce Lee decapitated, and
Yeah.
he's such a landmark figure that's like you don't want to humiliate, somebody who's your hero, you know what I mean? He's
yeah.
elevated in that level, and that's,
Yeah, if they put him
For
in there,
sure,
it would be law. Like you don't you don't
Oh yeah.
fatality, bro,
Yeah.
at
It just
all.
would work.
Yeah,
And that's the other thing, like and you had mentioned the 3D era games, back then I was hugely into Street Fighter, DOA, Virtual Fighter, and Tekken Tag. Those
yeah,
games were just, even when they come out today, they're whether they have their ups or downs. Even like
Mhm.
MK, we have our ups or
Yeah.
downs, and
yeah,
every game is just classic. Samurai Showdown. Just all those fighting games are. Virtua Fighter. We just draw from.
yeah.
It's
So
those are
many
great
iconic
games.
fighting games. Yeah, Bloody
Mhm.
Roar. I don't know if y'all remember that one for
Oh
the
yeah,
PlayStation.
yeah.
You had Killer Instinct. Just so many
Kevin
games.
Bayless. Have you guys
Yes.
talked to Kevin at
No.
all about
No.
Street Fighter? I'll mention it to him. We just met him in Arizona, and it's one of those things like Midway produced, or Killer Instinct.
Yeah.
Kevin was the animator on, and I met him because he was at Game On Expo. Great show in Arizona, and his band was there doing, it's all Killer Instinct guys in a band, and they were doing like their stuff out there, their show. And we met him on Saturday night, and we are like, oh my god, I work for Midway humor. It was like
Yeah.
Oh, that's
a
amazing.
camaraderie. Yeah, very
Yeah.
cool. That whole Killer Instinct team, those rare guys are very talented,
Yeah.
really
Oh, yeah,
great people.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, fun to
Yeah. Now
talk to
that
too.
would be a good matchup. KI versus MK. That would be sick.
Oh yeah, have Saber Wolf versus like Baraka,
Oh,
or Katana and what's her name,
Orchid.
Orchid.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Orchid.
Orchid.
yeah.
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 Yep.
Jeez,
Yeah, those are my
wouldn't that
two
be
favorite fighters
yeah?
growing up, MK and KI.
Oh
Yeah,
my
which
god,
is
yeah,
right behind them.
Oh yeah.
The-
Yeah.
yeah. And then you had NBA Jam and all those other games,
Oh yeah.
WrestleMania. Just
Absolutely.
you know, you had Ballers, you had all that, Slugfest. You had tons of stuff. You had. And Jojo, what was your first? This is what I wanted to ask you before we segued. What was your first arcade game that you're like, oh, I got to get this? You know what I mean? This is. And
yeah.
two, how did that come about? Did you have to? Did you get it before you were married, or did you get it while you were married? How'd you talk to your significant other to get it, and all of that? I want to hear that story. Like, how did that happen?
It's I never knew that you could, own them personally. And
Right.
whenever the first one I ever got was my MK2. Whenever I got it, it was completely stripped. The guy wanted $50 for it. There was nothing on it. It just was literally just a cabinet, and it had the
That
control
facial
box.
expression.
Yeah, but no control panel. So I
Oh
had
my
to
God.
source everything, and the way that I did it is I would look up, of course, videos on YouTube, a bunch of restore guys. But to get the electronics and stuff like that done, I just read the manual, just old school, just went through the manual, and I read that thing. I read the credits. I read just the index, everything on it. I just read it from top to bottom. And as far as with my wife, she's always supported um, my collections. Because first, before I jumped into arcades, I had a big collection of just games of Mortal Kombat. The 64 versions, the Game Boy versions, and I had a little like a Rubbermaid tub, and I used to just stick all my MK stuff in there. And that was my little pride and joy. I was like, man, when I die, bury this with me.
Yeah.
And so finally, whenever I went to actually get a cabinet, by that time we had a garage and stuff, and then with $50, so it wasn't really too crazy for me to get it. But like I said,
Yeah.
it was completely empty, no board, no monitor, no buttons, no
Wow.
wiring. So yeah, I had to. That's actually the one that's here.
Yeah, I think I've seen the video of
Yeah,
yeah. Wow.
yeah.
That's
When I first
insane.
got it, yeah,
How long did it take you to do all of that? Meaning like month wise or year wise
it probably
to
took me
get it
about
to
two
the point.
years.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 years to where it was actually playable with the CRT and stuff like that. Because originally I had put an LCD monitor in it, but it's just the classic games just don't look
Yeah.
as good with
Yeah, the
so but
color's off.
yeah.
Yeah.
So every cabinet I have in here, there's 15 total, and I make sure that every single one of them has a CRT in them. Because
Yeah.
these 90s games just look way better with the CRT. Um, you know, just
Well, it's the light, you know what I mean? The light coming off of that, and the color is just fantastic, Yeah, LCD or LED can't throw that
Yeah.
light as much or as
Yeah.
far as it, for the receptors to see it. Have you
yeah.
guys had Tim Kitzrow on at all?
We haven't had Tim on the podcast yet.
Okay.
I had the
Yeah.
pleasure to meet Tim for the first time in Cleveland. We talked about earlier. Yeah, yeah, great guy.
Oh
We
yeah.
would love to have him on.
Yeah, I'll pass that on too.
Yeah,
He's a fantastic guy.
yeah. I
Very
spent
worked on a lot of
yeah
stuff.
after Mortal during that whole era of just '90s midway arcade games.
Hmm.
NBA Jam came out, and I just remember going to my local video rental store. They had one in the back, and I probably played it just as much as I played Mortal Kombat. So yeah, it's definitely a favorite of mine.
Yeah, arcade games are so fun. Like NBA Jam, 4 player. Obviously, you play by yourself, but just the ability to just jump in. It was like that and Brian Collins' Rampage. You could
Rampage,
just
yeah,
jump into
Yes.
these games and just and it's not button mashing. People say, "Oh yeah, you're just button mashing," and it's like, no, there's a skill to that because I played the game so much that I
Yeah.
know what to hit. They're
Yeah, then you
fantastic.
had Total Carnage. God,
Yes.
ugh, ugh. Midway was just the Mercedes of arcades. Like my
Yeah.
personal NBA arcade game is NBA Showtime.
Oh yeah.
It's just everything, and that's the one. I guess one of the last ones that they did as far as sports games that I can think of offhead. And I get my kids involved, and that's probably the cabinet that gets the most play in here because people will come play Mortal Kombat with me, but of course I play them all the time. So they're like, "There's so many times you can kick my ass." before I get
Yeah.
bored. So I'll say,
Yeah.
all right, well, look, let's try this one out. And then we play the NBA Showtime, and God, we play that one for hours when I have barbecues and people over. And yeah, we've been wanting to make like a leaderboard here in the garage of just, you know, who's the best at it. So that one gets a lot of play here in the collection. And the surprisingly the WrestleMania, a lot of people love the
Oh
WrestleMania
yeah.
cabinet. Yeah, people will
Those
play
two
the
are
hell out
Mark
of that.
Trammell and Sal DeVita, man. Those guys were
Yeah.
Yes.
fucking fantastic. You know,
Oh
Yes.
yeah. I
love
met,
those guys.
of course, I met Sal originally. At the same time I met you. You probably don't remember. You may remember at the 25th
Yes.
anniversary Galloping Ghost.
Yeah, Galloping Ghost. Yeah.
Yeah, the Combat Con. Yeah, I was dressed as Noob Saibot, the classic Noob Saibot back then. That was a great experience, and you absolutely were just so friendly and great back then. But yeah, I met Sal back then, and then I met him again at Cleveland.
Yeah, great,
Yeah.
great, very talented. That guy's very talented. You know,
Yeah.
just he was like, you know, Mark Trammell was, you know, like the Ed Boon of, you know, Sal DeVita and John Tobias. You know what I mean, like that. You know, and then we also had George Petro with Jack Hager. That was, and then we had I think Eugene Jarvis, and I can't remember who artist equivalent was because he had many very talented artists like Matt Booty and the rest of those guys.
Yeah.
Midway had those guys up on top were very talented, very
Yeah, and the insert coin documentary is fantastic too. By the
Yeah.
way, it's
yeah. Josh Sway, I worked with him on
yeah,
Special
yes,
Forces and
yeah,
mythologies
yeah. He
and
was
other
Liu
games.
Kang in MK4, right? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
yeah. That's a great.
And once
documentary.
again, Showtime's a great game because you could just jump in. And my wife actually worked on some of Showtime because she still
Oh,
works
really?
at NetherRealm. Yeah, she works at NetherRealm Studios. She's on the character team. Jennifer Hedrick.
Okay.
She does like the fatalities dismemberment stuff. So she
Oh,
works on
nice.
that with
That
a
is really
bunch of other
cool.
people. Oh yeah.
One thing I wanted to see if you remembered, Carlos. Probably it was back when MK11 had released. Me and a friend of mine we visited Chicago, and I contacted you, and you were so helpful in trying to, because we were cosplayers, Noob Saibot cosplayers from MK11, and
Mm-hmm.
you worked so hard to try to get us a visit
Tour.
to
Yes.
the NetherRealm studio. And unfortunately, it just didn't work out because it was on a weekend and nobody was available. You were out of town, I think. And
Yeah.
I just want to thank you personally now, kind of, virtually in person, for working so hard to try to get us there. But that was just one experience, that I had, just how great you guys are with the fans and, trying to work with us and show your support.
Well, thank you. It was like you and I remember you. I remember MK Jasper trying to get in,
Yeah.
and it's one of those things where it's very difficult because they have, and this is not an excuse. One, this is just my opinion because I'm not working for them anymore, and this is now that I reflect and look back. They need to schedule a time where people that have supported us that can come in and just get a tour of the place. And it's very difficult because and here's the thing, there's not too many studios that are going to do that because obviously there's not many franchises that have lasted 30 years like Mortal Kombat or over 30 plus years. But there should be hey, we're going to do and it sucks because you might need to do a raffle or whatever, because what ends up happening is, and I tried my hardest, but what is difficult is, they have all their development artwork and all their workstations are open And what I think they need to, and this is just a suggestion, if anybody from WB or NetherRealm is listening to me, what they need to do is a fan day. And everybody would friggin' a fan day where you would, because this is possible, but this is just my opinion. It might be impossible, where they just clean up the studio, shut everything off. Obviously, there's the security stuff involved with, getting back, not background checks, but you know what I mean? Like, is this person going to come in and shoot the shit out of everybody because he hates something? But you know what I mean? Get certain
This is for
people in.
mythologies.
Yeah, exactly. This is like, exactly. But there is a way to, like, hey, on whether it's a Friday or a Saturday, you know what I mean? Sunday's out of it because everybody travels on a Sunday. Friday or Saturday, like one day a year, like everybody knows MK Day. Have at least 100 people come in, like, and we're talking fans. I don't want to see this, and I hate saying this. I don't want to see bullshit, chill, influencers,
Yeah.
getting it like, I got in again, I don't want to see, I want to see guys like yourself, MK Jasper, Doggy Style, Mike CD Net, all those guys,
Yeah.
Justin, Tab Muck, and the guys from,
McCollum.
Timo, all those guys just come in
Also Angel
once a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Come in once a year. And not saying everybody, will do a rotation, get certain people in. Hey, 100 people came in, have a little dinner or have a little lunch. You know what I mean? This is something, and hopefully NetherRealm is listening, or Warner Brothers, somebody from Warner Brothers. Go in, and how cool would that be if, like, hey, we did MK1, guys, come on in. We want to get your heartfelt, no bullshit reaction. What did you guys like? What did you not like? What do you think we could do to improve on the next game? You know what I mean? Because when you go to Twitter or you go to, like, YouTube, you're going to get just, 2 lines of hate or 2 lines of just bullshit of, like, where's smoke at? And you're like, oh, okay, that's the answer. You get people in, and I'm talking like, get, Mike Hollow, get, Tom Brady, get those guys, get everybody in, get Fate, get, Total MK, even if he came in from Australia or New Zealand, wherever he's from, get everybody in a room, 100 people just for this first year. Get some people in, let's all have a dinner, make an 8-hour day of it. How cool would that be?
Yeah,
that would be absolutely amazing.
I'd fly out.
Right.
I would definitely.
You know what I mean? And yeah, and whether like myself or my, and it doesn't matter. Let's put everything behind us. Let's just do it for the family, MK family. Have, whether it's like myself, my brother, or whoever else you want out there, or 1 or 2, or Sal DeVita. It doesn't matter. You put whoever you want up there. Come in. 8-hour day. Everybody sits there, has, whether it's lunch or dinner. We all talk about MK. What would you like to see on the next one? Nothing, no influence, no legal bullshit where it's like, oh, well, I said put this character in, so I should legally get $1,000 every game. None of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just a feedback and go, yeah, cool. We love you guys. Here's, and for the day, make some extra merch. And whether it's like MK Day 1, you know what I mean? And then the next year, MK Day 2, whatever, and just do a, fan service. Let's just do fan service.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Carlos, I love that idea.
Yeah, there's so many people.
That is what MK needs today.
Yeah, because there's so many people that deserve it, that deserve to, like I said, like someone I mentioned earlier, like Angel on Instagram. He's under Choose Your Destiny.
Choose Your Destiny. Yeah.
Yeah. Huge. And shout out Angel. He's just a huge MK fan.
Absolutely.
And there's just so many guys that completely deserve it for sure. For sure.
Yeah, MK Collector, all those guys. Just get them all in, like, and if they don't get in the first day, let's not have a, as a MK family, let's not have that bullshit. I'm first. I did it. I'm the original.
Yeah.
Just put that aside
Yeah.
because we'll have it once. If
Mhm.
it's once a year, they clean up that studio, or we have it. I've been asking my brother and all these other guys, like Rich and I said, wouldn't it be cool if we just had in Chicago a retrocon whatever, and it was just MK focused, and we just put all our bullshit behind us.
Yeah.
Just have everybody come in, and I know it's not going to be great every year, but let's do once every 5 years, once every 10 or whatever. Let's just all get together. Okay, let's whatever game it was, like we saw MK1 have developers there from NetherRealm or WB, have the talent there, have everybody get together, whether it's at NetherRealm, whether it's the Rosemont Convention Center or whatever, and go, what can we do to make MK great again? Like
Definitely.
when we were all in that arcade or all had it in our hands at home. How can we do that?
Yeah.
Or how can we do fan service of like, yep, sign in. I'm just going to sign because we do sign all that. My brother has a story of him signing all day with the Super Mario guy, and they didn't
Oh.
leave until like 3 in the morning.
Charles
Yeah,
Martinet.
because
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. And my brother was like, hey, because they were like, hey, it's time to close up. And, he was like, the Mario guy was like, no, I still have a
Yeah.
line out the door. And this is in South America, and they
Uh,
both signed. My brother's like, absolutely.
yeah.
They put us here.
Yeah.
We got to and take the time to talk to people. Everybody has time, and I understand. This is the thing. We're all people. We all need to talk to each other. We all need to respect what somebody has done in order to put us into the position that we're at. And we need to make time. And I get it, Tom Cruise, you don't want a psycho person, coming up but you know what? You need to spend 30 seconds or an hour or 2 hours or whatever of your time talking to a human being about and reflecting about the things that made all of us happy, and that's it.
Yeah. Definitely.
And I went on my rant again, so
No, yeah.
Um,
No, that's perfectly fine,
yeah.
and we really appreciate you, you know, feeling comfortable enough with us, and to be able to, share these feelings and stuff like that. Because, like I said, we're the combat dads. We're here to talk about, not
yeah.
necessarily just the game, but just what the life after, fatherhood and personal hobbies and stuff like that. And we definitely got to get together again for
Yes.
another interview, for us to get together, and I really love the idea that you said of getting together actually with Mike Jensen from your MK Arcade Source. Our last interview, we were talking about setting up because he has the arcade,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we were talking
In
about,
Wichita. Yeah.
yeah, in Wichita. So we were actually talking about putting together a Mortal Kombat tournament. So that would be cool to for us to fly you guys out and have y'all there, and we just do a full on MK tournament, and try to have all these guys fly in from different parts of the world, to all get together to have this full MK arc. It'd be dedicated to strictly, and of course all the machines are there. He literally has all the
Oh yeah.
machines there. So that's something, for maybe in the future, and we can go over more.
Oh, absolutely. I'm open to that. It's one of those things that we got to pay back. We got to pay back that essence or that karma. The ontology, or
Yeah, definitely.
it's yeah. I'd love to do that.
Yeah, that would be amazing. But on that note, we hate to let you go. Didn't want to take up too much of your time, but again, we really appreciate you hanging out with us and just sharing so many jewels and gems with us. with your journey, and toast to another 30 years. And it's amazing too that you said that your father is 99 in February. What day in February?
It'll be February 13th.
I'm actually February 17th, so that's
Awesome.
cool. On the 13th,
How
I'm
old?
gonna remember.
How old?
36.
Oh, you guys are still you're young. And Matt, how old are you?
I'm 42. So.
Oh, still young. You guys are young puppies.
But again, like I said, we appreciate you for stopping by. And like I said, this is not the end of our episodes with you. We definitely gotta do a part 2 with you, and we have so much more to also discuss.
Definitely.
Oh, absolutely. We got a ton of things to discuss. Once again, and Matt, go ahead, finish up.
I just want to say thank you so much, Carlos, for taking your time and talking with us today, and just thank you for all your contributions to the community collective, just being part of what made our childhood so awesome.
Yeah.
Matt and Jojo, thank you once again. I want to thank, and I always say this, I want to thank the Almighty Father. I want to thank the MK family. You guys, you put us where we are on the map. We did our best to do, what we could do for the franchise, and we're all a family, love each other. We're an MK family. We're not a community. I mean, we're a community as a family. We're not individuals who are like, oh, you are our fans. No, we're all family. We're gonna get together. We've met you and we haven't met you, and we will meet you one day, and we're just gonna have a blast. And I love these moments. They're
Definitely.
precious.
Awesome.
Thank you again.
Where can fans see you next? What's your next event?
I have a Megabyte in Los Angeles. That's next week. That is on the 10th, January 10th. And then after that, I have one scheduled every month. And I think I have July and August off sometimes. It depends. My brother schedules me. So, it's usually once a month. I fly out everywhere and anywhere. We're trying to get England again, a twofold to do. It's like a kung fu Mortal Kombat reunion. They're trying to do an old like Shaw Brothers kung fu thing, and then have an MK event at another place, another town. I think it's in Harsborough, but just everywhere. We're just and I'm not the greatest on social media. I'm starting to like take a step back. I was like inundated of like, you guys got to see all this.
Yeah.
This is the funny thing. Sorry, and I know we're saying our goodbyes. I have literally, and just somebody reached out to me, two gentlemen that I have met, that my brother know. I have 2 boxes of game development notes, illustrations from any time I worked on any Mortal Kombat game. And we were like all getting together thinking like, oh my God, we got to scan all this stuff in, and they would make great coffee table books. So that's my next project, that. And
Awesome.
Old School Gamers has a thing I'm supposed to do with them, and just everybody else, and then come back on this podcast and shoot the shit.
Yeah, definitely. You got to come to Texas.
Let's do it in person.
I think we're gonna be in Dallas in February, I want to say. I'll reach out to you. I'll let you know the dates.
Definitely. I wouldn't miss it. I wouldn't miss it for the world, because I remember, I think it was like 2 summers ago that y'all were in Austin.
Yes.
And I didn't get to make it that day.
I think you were saying you were busy. Yeah.
Because I had messaged you. Yeah. And I was like, hey, I want to go meet you guys. And
same here. You guys were in Nashville at the Music City Con, and I was out of town that weekend, and I was so disappointed.
We'll be back again. You know, we went out and saw Timo, and then on the other end, we went and saw Derek Blaman and a bunch of other people, you know, and Curry and those guys. You know, it's one of those things, you're gonna miss it. If you miss it, then don't worry. We'll see each other again, you know, somewhere. You know,
For sure.
we'll
Definitely.
you know, I always
Yeah.
try my best to see you guys. So
Yeah. Thanks for
Definitely.
being so active
Yes.
and just active in the community.
For
well,
sure.
thank you again. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, until the next one, we appreciate all you guys for watching. And if you haven't already, if you would hit subscribe and the notification bell, and also if you can like the interview, we'd appreciate that a lot. Mr. Carlos Pesina, again, we appreciate you, and we wish you nothing but success on all the ventures and safe travels to everywhere you're going.
Thank you. Love you guys.
And we love you too. Y'all
Okay.
take care. Y'all have a good night.
See ya.